welcome back to my channel. My name is Ryan. Here on my channel I post lifestyle and university related content. If you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe and turn that notification bell. So today's video I want to share with you my interview experiences for when I was applying to the MSc for Physiotherapy. If you want to see any more physiotherapy content, be sure to check out my Road to Physiotherapy playlist where I've had some videos in there so far. But that playlist will be where I post all of the physio related stuff whilst I'm studying. So be sure to check that out and be sure to subscribe, you know? Anyway, so let's just get on with the experiences. So before I do that, I want to talk about how I prepared for interviews. I'll insert a clip if I explain this a little too fast. But yeah, the 3 ways I prepared for interviews were using the university site. So on the university site, if you didn't hear from the university in the email when they invited you, the format will show on the site, as well as potential questions that they could possibly ask you. So yeah, that's there as well. And maybe some tips on how to, present yourself and so on and so forth is very helpful. Check out the university site. Another thing I did was read over the personal statement, because as I've said before, for the MSc you're able to apply with directly to the university, so you're able to write different personal statements and tailor your personal statements. So I think that's the best approach. And to make sure that I was actually referencing the right personal statement, I read over it either the day or the week before. And the last way I prepared myself was I made this Word document with random questions I found online related to physiotherapy. I used the STAR principle to come up with answers and questions and stuff that I had for in mind of what I saw online. To be fair, there wasn't a lot I could find, but I just kind of grasped things together and made that little Word document for myself to prepare. But anyway, like I said, I'll just insert the clip after this. Firstly, on the right side of my screen, I have up my personal statement for that specific university. As I mentioned, obviously, in my application process video, I had to write different personal statements for each university based off their word limit. So some of them are slightly more in depth than the others, so I just had to remember what I've said to each university. I also then go over to the left side of my screen where I've made this document called Interview Prep, where I have potential questions. The stuff in the highlighted stuff is stuff from my personal statement that I just wanted to basically be able to expand on just in case they ask me any questions. These are the key points that I would take away from there. I have the definition of my course of physio, and I have my reasoning why I'm studying physio, want to study physio anyway, in there, because that is important. After every interview, I add questions to here. I remove questions. I may add key points to myself, make sure you do this and don't do that kind of things. So that's important. I would recommend, if you don't like doing Word documents, to do this. Maybe write it down, but definitely give yourself practice questions and make sure you go over that. The other thing I do is I go to the university site. So as you can see, I'll have an interview with St. George's. I go to their site and I go on their page and seeing how can I prepare for the day? What do I need to do? Is there something I need to keep up to date with? Those kind of stuff. I feel like that's really helpful when it comes to the day. But those are the 3 things that I do to prepare for my interviews. Okay, so now that you've seen how I prepared for these interviews, I'm going to talk about my experiences. So my first interview experience was with AECC. I can't remember what it stands for, but AECC, and that was back in July of 2020. And that's a January entry degree. That's why it was so early. Well, late for some people if you thought I was going for September. But yeah, so I applied to AECC, got an interview in July, and that interview was on Microsoft Teams. There was about, I want to say 10 to 15 of us in this group, and we were asked there were 4 stages to it. You got the intro stage, question, case study, and then we had reflection, there you go. The reflection stage as well. They might mix up the format. I'm not going to give you guys exact questions that were asked just in case I don't want to get in any trouble, but I want to help you guys out as much as possible. So yeah, that experience for me was not amazing, honestly. I think it was because it was my first interview. I was very nervous, and even though I had experience in terms of speaking to friends to look on their experiences, and I've had experience from general job interviews, I was still a mess. I stuttered so bad on the simplest things, where it's introduce yourself, stuttered on my name, stuttered on the fact that I did sport and exercise science. It was just hard. And if you've noticed, if you've watched other videos and you're probably going to notice in this video, I speak pretty fast. So when I've been asked to slow down, I have a tendency to stutter over what I'm saying because I'm not accustomed to speaking at a slower speed. So yeah, struggles. So I started the whole way through it, and then like I had a big technical issue. So everybody else on Microsoft Teams, you know how they had the hands up option? Everybody else was able to use their hands up option, but for some reason for me, the hands up option didn't want to work. And when you're having a group discussion, group interview, they typically assess you based on like what score you have in terms of how you answer these questions, how you work with the team, so on and so forth. And then depending on the score you get out of whatever they're ranking it for, will be whether they give you an offer or not. So the fact that I was unable to necessarily participate in the group discussions as they were like going on was rather annoying for me, like very, very annoying. Because as I said, what happened was the teacher realized that I was unable to have my hand up for some reason. So what she was likely like nice enough to do was to wait until the end of everybody's discussion and then be like, oh, Mariah, do you have anything to input? And I'd be like, yeah or no. And most of the time it was no, to be honest, because like, you know, when you have a question pop up, or teacher asks a question, for example, and you and someone else at the same time get an answer, and you like, you put your hand up, teacher's seen both of you, but they go for the other person, and the other person says exactly what you were going to say. But then the teacher turns to you like, oh, did you still have something to say? And you're just like, no, in terms of the fact that like, oh, you said what I was going to say. And times that by 10, you know, 10 or 15, I can't remember exactly how many people were there, but like just times that by more people. And it happened so often that I'd be like, I have nothing to say. This is so embarrassing. There was actually one point in the interview where I was like, will they notice if I just dip? I was so tempted because I was like, this is not good. Anyway, so we get through the interview. I'm here struggling. And then it comes to the reflection part. Oh, I struggled with the reflection. Like, don't get me wrong, like, I'm used to obviously writing, did an undergrad and all that. But I'm not used to being sprung on to do a reflection or something like that. So that was very bad. I remember in the reflection, I was just like, yeah, I'm not usually that quiet, but, you know, technical difficulties, and it was a struggle. And yeah, it was embarrassing. So embarrassing. So yeah, that's probably why I don't remember loads of information about that interview, because I have buried it so deep in my mind. But yeah, on to the next interview. Okay, so my next interview was at London South Bank around, I think it was November 2020. Around that time. So London South Bank and the rest of the universities I'm going to speak on are September entry degrees. So yeah, I had that interview then. I got the email, as you'll see in my university decision reaction video that I'll put up in the card above. You will see that when I got it, it was pretty soon after I submitted my application. So I was rather shocked that I heard from them, but at the same time I was very grateful, because at that point I had already chose to reject AECC. But yeah, because I decided I didn't want to go in January. Anyway, let me get into this. So I get the email being like, yeah, you know, want you for an interview. It's going to be over Zoom, or I think this is Skype actually. It's going to be over Skype, and someone will contact you to confirm. Okay. Tell me why it comes like 2 weeks before. Well, not like, it wasn't 2 weeks, like 2 weeks before I got the interview. And then like the day before, I was like, no one's confirmed anything with me. And I was getting worried because my Skype is under a different email from the email I applied with. So I needed to talk to someone to let them know, you can't contact me through that email. One, I'm pretty sure they didn't have my phone number. So I was like, how are we gonna do this? You know? So I remember it being like the night before, I jumped on, you know how university on their sites, they usually have those active live chats. So I jumped on the live chat and I was talking to someone like, could you help me? I'm trying to get a hold of someone, but no one's responding. They're like, yeah, sure, I'll be right back. Where were they? Where did they go? The live chat ended and no one responded. I was like, you can't be serious. Like, it got to the point where at first I was like, maybe my Wi-Fi is playing up and they've responded and I just haven't seen it. So I wrote another message and I was like, oh, if you're struggling to find any information about me, do you want me to provide any more information to help you? It sent. No response. I was like, you cannot be for real. Not impressed. Anyway, so it comes the morning of the interview, and like I ring the university because I'm like, no, this is ridiculous, because someone needs to confirm, because how am I gonna know? You know what I mean? I knew the time of when the interview was gonna be, but I'm like, how are you gonna contact me if you don't have my other email? Anyway, so I get a hold of someone, and they're like, no, it's actually gonna be on the phone, and I'm like, perfect. Gave them my phone number. Fine, cool. Gonna be let's say 3 o'clock. I think it was around 3 o'clock. Sorry if you can hear that. They're doing some work across the road, and yeah. So yeah, they were like, okay, it's gonna be over the phone. I'm like, cool, I got this. Tell me why. Like, I'm pretty sure they were good maybe 10 minutes late on the call. I understand that like you have other people you're interviewing, but it's just, maybe it's just me. That's one of those people where if you tell me you're going to ring me at 3, I'm by the phone at 3 o'clock, just like. To be fair, I'm at the phone by 2:55, just sitting there like, okay, you know, waiting for this phone call. So it got to the point where I was like, oh, are they not gonna ring? Anyway, they rang, and the interview was alright. I got interviewed by 2 people on the phone. One was the main person talking, the other person, they were just more in the background, listening in the phone conversation and added their 2 bits in occasionally. I got asked about 4 or 5 questions. Obviously, I got asked the question, why the university? Why physiotherapy? Those like typical questions that you'd be answered. The experience itself, I didn't stutter too much in comparison to how I did on the Microsoft Teams one with AECC, but I did struggle a little bit. I tend to find that like I prefer to see the person, and me and phone calls, I don't. Is it just me? But I don't really like phone calls. But yeah, so that was an experience within itself. It went over pretty quickly. It was about maybe 5 to 15 minutes. Like 5 minutes would be if you rush through the questions, and like 15 minutes longer side of things. So we had the questions they asked. There was one bit where the woman on the phone worded the question a bit weird, and I was just like, what? And then like, it was kind of one of those ones where it's just like someone going, tree, and you're like, oh, okay, what about the tree? Like, what do you want me to say about the tree? And you're like, oh, the leaves on the tree, and they're like, yeah, the leaves on the tree, and you're just like, okay. Anyway, that was me with the way she worded the question. I was just like, is this a trick? Because you're not really giving me anything to go off. So I had that. But yeah, I think after that interview, I didn't feel crazy confident, because I was like, but I believed I answered the questions to the best of my abilities, and I was in a way better position than I was with AECC. But I was like, hey, if I screwed up the way I screwed up with AECC, I should be pretty good. But yeah, so I left that interview being like, So on to my third interview. My third interview was with St George's University London. I always forget what order it's in, but yeah, St George's University London. That one was like little individual videos. That was an MMI one. So what we had is 7 questions, 4 minutes for each question. You can find all this information on their site, but 4 minutes for each question. It was one of those remote ones because obviously I couldn't go in person for any of these interviews I've had. But yeah, that one was actually alright. While I was doing it, I was a bit like, what the hell? So I have people that I know who've done those interviews for them before, and they're just like, you know, prepare, but you don't necessarily have to prepare. I'm like, yeah, I ain't taking that. I'm going to prepare, you know what I mean? Honestly, you really, as long as you're aware of what's going on in the world, and you're aware of, like, how your experiences will help you, and you're able to express your passion for physiotherapy, you'll be fine. Honestly, you'll be so fine. And for me, there were times where I did have to re-record once or twice, but they recommend you don't do that. It was just like, no, I completely butchered that response. It's the exact same response, but I'd be like, no, not worth it. But I would say one thing that like YouTube has helped me with is made me even more comfortable with talking to a camera, because if you asked me to do this before I had a YouTube channel, I'd be like, no thank you. But yeah, so I had that one with St George's, asked the questions. The questions were a bit out there in my opinion. Like, I can't give an exact example, but they do have some examples on their site. But yeah, the questions were out there, a little weird. But what I do like about the questions not being your typical questions that you would expect is that for someone who is good at memorizing things, and someone who's good at, like, you know, someone who's good at exams, for example, they can't necessarily not cheat the system, but it makes it a fair ground because it actually shows the person's qualities just by the way you answer these questions. It's not just someone going, oh, this sounds good, I think they would like me to say this. It's actually someone having to think about it on the spot and explain your thought process and so on and so forth. But yeah, you did that, and then after you did that, you would send in the videos that you'd taken. You send them in and upload them to the university thing, and then you get an email and they'll be like, okay, cool, we'll get back to you. I think I was told within 8 weeks. But yeah, I had that with them. And after the interview, I remember like talking to my boyfriend about it, and I was just like, hi, I like explaining to him some of the questions and the way I answered them, and I was like, I think I did okay. I don't know. But yeah, I think I did okay. And on to my last interview. My last interview was with the University of Birmingham. I was stressing because I forgot to say before, but at the time of me applying, St. George's was my top one, so I was really stressing. And then when I heard from Birmingham wanting me for an interview, I was like, these are top universities. And if you've seen my university experience video, you will know that like before I heard from these universities, I received a rejection from another university. But I don't want to spoil that video, but go check that out. So I was a bit like walking on eggshells, being like, this is too good to be true. You know what I mean? Anyway, so the Birmingham interview was 1-to-1 over Zoom. Well, 2-to-1. It was over Zoom. I had a teacher and a practitioner talk to me. Honestly, I can't really give you too much about the interview in terms of the way it was structured. For me, it felt like a genuine conversation that I'd be having with friends. Obviously with a respect level, but you know what I mean? It felt very comfortable. I wasn't too nervous. I was at first, but then after I like settled down, I was making 1 or 2 jokes, like appropriate jokes. I think make jokes if you think it will lighten the mood and it's actually appropriate, but making 1 or 2 jokes. And yeah, I remember leaving that being like, yes, like that was so good. Because I remember after, when they asked you, okay, do you have any questions? In that section, I was asking them questions, and I kind of felt like one of the people who interviewed me went a little beyond the question I was asking her. And I was like, it sounds like she's selling the uni to me. What? So I was just confident, but at the same time, like, you're confident, but you're not going to get too out of it because you don't want to be like, yeah, that went so good. And then you get a letter and it's like, nah. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, so I was very, very happy with that. We spoke about my dissertation a little bit because they wanted proof of like research. So we spoke on dissertation and how I conducted my dissertation, what my dissertation was about. We spoke about like, what you may expect from masters, where you intend to take the masters, like in terms of where you intend to take it after the university degree and like stuff like that. But it was very calm, and like I said, I felt at ease, like a lot of ease. I was just glad that it was my last interview, and that was, sorry, I forgot to say for St. George's, my St. George's interview was in January of 2021, and this one was in February 2021. But yeah, it was very, very chill. Yeah, those were my experiences. I know most of my experiences, I was either very relaxed or very, very nervous and tense and stuttered like crazy. But I hope those experiences kind of gave you an insight. I know I didn't really share too much in terms of how, like, what questions were asked and how they were asked. But yeah, that's my interview experiences for physiotherapy. If you have any questions, be sure to, you can slide in your DMs on the orere.yt like page on Instagram, or you can leave them down in the comments below and I can share what I can with you guys without breaching disclosure. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and I will speak to you guys soon.